Picture this. You walk into the Apple store. Your old phone still works. The battery drains a little faster than it used to, and there's a hairline crack across the corner of the screen. But it functions. You tell yourself the upgrade is practical, a productivity investment, a business decision. So you spend $1,200 on the new iPhone Pro Max, and you walk out feeling entirely justified. Then you get to your car. You look down at the phone, gleaming, titanium, flawless. And then you look at your charging cable. The frayed $5 gas station cable suddenly feels like an insult. So you pick up the MagSafe charger. $40. Reasonable. You get home. Your old plastic case looks absurd on a device this refined. You order the leather case. $60. Then you remember. Your wired headphones don't even connect anymore. To truly experience what this phone is capable of, you need the AirPods Pro. $250. Within 48 hours, your $1,200 decision has quietly become $1,550, and at no point did it feel like a choice. This is not a failure of willpower. This is not carelessness with money. This is one of the most sophisticated psychological traps ever identified. And today, we're going to examine exactly how it works, why it's more dangerous now than at any point in history, and 3 concrete strategies you can begin using immediately to stop it from quietly eroding your financial life. Part 1. The French philosopher who went broke. Over a bathrobe. To understand why this pattern keeps repeating, we need to travel back to France. The year is 1765. Denis Diderot was one of the most celebrated intellectual figures of his era, co-founder of the Encyclopédie, a philosopher of considerable reputation. And yet, despite his fame, Diderot was perpetually broke. He lived simply. Old clothes, a worn wooden chair, a dusty but beloved library. And by his own account, he was genuinely content. Then, Catherine the Great entered the picture. The Empress of Russia, an admirer of his work, learned of his financial struggles. She offered to purchase his library for what would amount to tens of thousands of dollars in today's money, while allowing him to keep every single book. For the first time in his life, Diderot had real financial breathing room, so he did what many of us would do. He treated himself. He purchased a magnificent scarlet dressing gown. Luxurious, beautifully made. He put it on, looked in the mirror, and felt transformed. But then he sat down to write, and something began to bother him. The robe was exquisite. The desk, however, was scratched, ink-stained, and deteriorating. The contrast was jarring, so he replaced the desk. Then the threadbare rug looked shabby against the new mahogany. He bought a Damascus rug. The curtains looked cheap beside it. He replaced the curtains. The old chair looked like kindling next to the new furnishings. He bought a leather armchair. Then came new paintings, new sculptures, new mirrors. Month by month, Diderot systematically replaced every object in his study until the entire room matched the standard of that one robe. And at the end of it, Denis Diderot was broke again. He later wrote an essay reflecting on the experience, and in it he captured something profound. I was the absolute master of my old dressing gown. I have become the slave of my new one. That is the Diderot effect. One elevated purchase enters your life and quietly demands that everything surrounding it rise to meet it. You believe you own your possessions, but given the right conditions, your possessions end up owning you. Part 2. Why this trap is more dangerous now than ever. You might be thinking, that's a compelling story about a philosopher from 3 centuries ago, but you don't own a scarlet robe. Here's why it applies to you every single day, and why it's actually more dangerous now than it was in Diderot's time. In 1765, triggering this effect required physical effort. You had to walk somewhere. Deliberate, slowly, and make a considered decision. Friction was built into the process. Today, that friction has been systematically removed. One-click purchasing, targeted advertising that follows your browsing behavior across every platform. Influencers, whose entire business model depends on making products feel like identity statements. Buy now, pay later services that eliminate the psychological weight of spending. And same-day delivery, meaning there is no cooling off period between the impulse and the arrival. The chain reaction that took Diderot months can now complete itself in 48 hours. Consider a modern example. You decide to invest in your health and purchase a Peloton bike. $1,500 to $1,700 depending on the model. A legitimate commitment. But when the bike arrives, you realize you can't ride it in old gym shorts. You don't feel like the people on the screen. So you buy the cycling shoes, $150. Then the compression shorts, $80. Then the branded top, $50. Then you notice the bike looks out of place in your living room, so you begin designing a proper workout space, a mat, dumbbells, perhaps a new display for streaming the classes. You didn't buy a Peloton. You bought an entire identity. And that is precisely why the Diderot effect is so powerful in the modern era. It was never really about the objects. It's about who you believe you are, and the need for everything around you to reflect that belief. Part 3. The real reason. You can never just buy one thing. Here is the psychology underneath all of this, and once you see it clearly, it becomes very difficult to unsee. Human beings crave internal consistency. We need our external environment to align with our internal self-image. When you purchase a high-status item, you're not simply acquiring an object. You are upgrading your identity. Consider the anchor item concept. If you've always seen yourself as a practical, understated person, your wardrobe, your home, your habits, all of it exists in harmony with that self-image. Everything is coherent. But the moment you make a significant purchase that stretches beyond that identity, a luxury car, a designer item, a high-end renovation, you shift your baseline. And now, everything that previously felt perfectly adequate begins to feel inadequate by contrast. Researchers call this the anchor effect. The new item sets a new standard, and everything below that standard creates genuine psychological discomfort. To relieve that discomfort, you upgrade, and then you upgrade again. You're not overspending because you lack discipline. You're overspending to maintain narrative consistency, to keep the story you're telling yourself about who you are internally coherent. This is also why the fake it till you make it philosophy, when applied to material possessions, can be financially destructive. If you purchase a luxury watch before your income can genuinely support that lifestyle, that watch will begin demanding a wardrobe, a vehicle, a social environment that matches it. You've elevated your identity without elevating your income, and your spending will relentlessly chase that gap. Most people evaluate purchases by looking at a single number. They look at the price tag and ask, "Can I afford this?" That is the wrong question, and it's costing far more than most people realize. The right question is, what is the total system cost of this purchase? Here's a real example. You decide to renovate your kitchen. You budget $10,000 for new cabinets. Entirely reasonable. But once those clean modern cabinets are installed, your decade-old refrigerator suddenly looks completely out of place. It still works perfectly, but the visual mismatch feels unbearable. So you replace it. $2,000 for a stainless steel model. Now the fridge and the cabinets look great, but the vinyl flooring beneath them looks cheap and dated by comparison. You refloor with hardwood. $5,000. Now the kitchen looks exceptional, but this is an open concept home, and standing in your beautifully renovated kitchen, you can see directly into the living room, which now looks dated and neglected by contrast. The renovation has leaked into an entirely different space. New paint, new furniture, new sectional. Another $18,000, easily. The final bill, $35,000. The original budget, $10,000. But here is the part worth sitting with. Before those cabinets were installed, you had no issue with the refrigerator. You never noticed the floor. You were entirely comfortable in that living room. The upgrade created the dissatisfaction. The new item manufactured a problem that did not exist before you made the purchase. There is one dimension of the Diderot effect that rarely gets discussed, and I believe it may be the most important. When Diderot had his old robe, he was completely free with it. He used it to wipe his pen. He wore it carelessly. He was, in every sense, its master. When the new robe arrived, he became afraid of it. Stiff, cautious. The object he purchased to feel better actually diminished his daily experience. You felt this. When you buy a beautiful new white sofa, you stop letting friends bring drinks into the living room. You stop letting the dog on the furniture. You stop letting the children eat in that space. You have stopped living in your home because you're too busy maintaining it. You've become the curator of a museum, not the inhabitant of a home. The upgrade, in practice, downgraded your quality of life. You paid more money for the privilege of enjoying your own space less. That is the deeper trap of the Diderot effect. It doesn't just cost you money, it quietly degrades your lived experience, even as each individual purchase feels like an improvement. Now, living minimally and never purchasing anything of quality is not a realistic strategy, and it's not how I approach my own life. But there are 3 specific things you can begin doing today to interrupt this pattern before it takes hold. Strategy 1. Calculate the system cost, not just the item cost. Before any significant purchase, pause and ask yourself, what is this going to demand? Not just the price of the item itself, but the full ecosystem it requires to function and to feel right. If you're considering a new gaming console at $500, does it demand a 4K television to fully utilize? A second controller, a subscription service, an upgraded furniture arrangement? Write it all down before you commit. If the true system cost is $1,500 and you are only prepared to spend $500, that changes the decision entirely. If you cannot comfortably afford the full system, you cannot afford the anchor item. Strategy 2. Buy one, give one. The Diderot effect thrives on accumulation. You add the new thing and retain everything else, then spend energy trying to make it all cohere. The antidote is to cap your inventory. Buy a new pair of shoes. An old pair leaves the house. Donate.
Strategy 1.
Sell it.
System cost
Pass
thinking.
it on.
Write out a full
This
cost
practice
breakdown on
keeps
paper. List
you in the
direct
mindset
costs,
of someone
indirect
who
costs,
uses
and
what they
opportunity
own,
costs.
rather
This
than
reveals the
someone
true
who
price of
collects
an
and
action.
curates. It prevents the slow accumulation that quietly pressurizes your environment. Strategy 3. Strategic downgrading. This one is counterintuitive, but it is genuinely powerful. Sometimes the most effective way to reset your baseline and relieve psychological
old one
pressure
served me well,
is to
but it's time
deliberately
for an
keep a
upgrade.
visible part of your life modest.
Now I'll donate this old one so
Drive
someone
a
else can
car that
benefit.
is slightly below
Buy
what
one,
you could
give
comfortably
one.
afford.
A simple way
Wear
to
a
make a
watch that
difference.
is simple and functional.
Okay, time to declutter.
When your
First up,
anchor
this old
items are
phone.
understated,
Let's go donate it and free
you
up some
feel
space.
no pressure
Out the
to
door we
upgrade
go.
everything around them.
This will be a huge
There is no
relief.
performance
One
to
less
maintain,
thing.
no image to curate, no chain reaction waiting to begin. A low maintenance identity is, in practical terms, one of the most valuable financial assets you can cultivate. It allows you to build wealth quietly while others are busy maintaining appearances. Before I wrap this up, I want to be direct about something. The Diderot effect is not an abstract academic concept. It is operating in your life right now, in your wardrobe, your garage, your kitchen, your living room. Every time you make a purchase you're proud of, and then feel that quiet unease with everything surrounding it, that is Diderot's scarlet robe doing exactly what it did to him. I've made those purchases myself. My wife and I have both initiated chain reactions we didn't fully anticipate. That's part of being human. But what changed for me was learning to see the pattern before I was inside it.
Shop till
Before
you
any
drop.
significant purchase now, I ask
Don't
myself
miss out.
one question.
Act now.
What is this going to demand next? Not because I'm
Overload
unwilling to
incoming.
spend, but because I want to remain the master of what I own, rather than the other way around. Consumerism is engineered at every level to make you feel incomplete, to keep you believing you are one purchase away from finally having everything in place. But Diderot demonstrated 300 years ago that the one purchase doesn't finish the puzzle. It resets the board entirely. The people who build genuine,
Focus
lasting
on
wealth
building
are not
wealth
necessarily
through
those
smart
who spend the
investments.
least. They are the ones who are
Watch your
intentional about what they
portfolio
allowed
grow
in,
steadily
who remained
over
in
time.
control of the story they were telling.
Consistent
If you found
strategies
value in
lead
this,
to long-term
consider sharing
success.
it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to go deeper on building the systems that actually protect
Stay
and grow your
intentional.
financial life, the link is in the description.
Build real wealth.
Stay intentional and have a prosperous day.